After waking up in a strange room with a mill, businessman Joe felt sick since he couldn't remember how he got there. His phone was gone, the walls were high, and the sole door was heavy and closed. He panicked and shouted for aid when the air vent instructed him to keep quiet. He cried for help in panic. The air vent speaker identified himself as a prisoner and explained the situation to Joe. He informed Joe that he had been drugged and would be depressed for a few days. Next day would be especially tough, the voice said. However, the voice quickly told Joe to return to work and ended connection. Joe, desperate, tried to climb the walls but failed. He heard whistling outside and watched someone drop food and water through a door slot as he neared collapse. Joe ran to the door and begged for aid, saying he had a pregnant wife, but the man on the other side closed the slot, bruising Joe's hand. Joe hesitantly accepted their supper and used his tie to bind his damaged hand as darkness fell. A light emerged on the wall, and an AI voice welcomed Joe to advanced career training. The AI didn't answer Joe's questions, and the corporate logo faded, leaving only a few numbers. Joe asked his neighbor for clarification. His neighbor said the equipment worked, but not for the workers. Counting down to midnight, he wouldn't say what would happen, but it seemed ominous. Joe asked for further information, but surrounding cell employees yelled at him because they wanted to sleep. The neighbor said all the noises were employees who had irritated Mallard, Joe's employer. Joe was appalled to understand Mallard's dirty tactics. After falling asleep, Joe was woken up around midnight by unsettling noises. An employee was being fired, and their screams were agonizing. Joe desperately shielded his ears as the AI voice said this was a peaceful road to well-being. The next morning, the guard delivered additional food and told Joe to keep the cells clean and throw rubbish in the corner toilet. Joe dumped the empty food packaging into the stinking hole. While doing so, he found a human skull in the ground, confirming that employees had died here. Joe couldn't believe that Mallard, a strong firm, could cover up so many deaths, but his neighbor explained that this was in the fine print of their contracts, which nobody read. Therefore, the corporation had their consent. The alarm silenced Joe as he argued with the AI, and the AI announced Joe's advanced career training seminar. The AI showed that Joe's productivity had dropped in recent months, and he had taken too much personal time, hurting the department. Joe was assigned to push the mill and earn a point per revolution to fix this. He had to reach 50 points daily or be punished. Even if they met the quota, the employee with the fewest points was fired each day. Joe apologized for his outburst and asked to be freed to check on his pregnant wife out of desperation. His neighbor advised him resisting was pointless. Nobody left this facility till their time was up because the company didn't care. He advised Joe to work and survive. Soon after starting construction on the mill, Joe discovered the challenge. One revolution required a lot of strength due to the rusted machinery. The AI praised him and played an ad when he did it. They fed Joe inadequate rations all day while he worked in the heat. While Joe worked, the AI aired ads non-stop. Joe heard employee terminations every night as he tried to sleep. The AI recited more ads to block out these unsettling noises. The next morning, Joe ate breakfast and talked to his neighbor. He asked why fulfill a daily quota if someone would be fired anyhow, equating it to punishment. The neighbor told Mallard that good enough wasn't enough, and encouraged Joe not to divulge his 100-point quota from the day before to avoid becoming a target. Joe was advised by the neighbor to work hard enough to survive but not too hard to develop unrealistic expectations. Joe thought about his wife, Kate, and their new house as he worked to fulfill today's quota. Kate was worried about the company's enormous, expensive house, but Joe reassured her that it was the product of his hard work. She had a pregnancy appointment the next day and reminded Joe to take time off, which he battled with. Kate lamented his work-first attitude and noted that it will only get worse with the kid. Kate detected a problem and interrupted their talk. Today, Joe finished his 150-point requirement but was shocked by a guard pounding on the door. The guard told Joe to take off his clothing before opening the door, then escorted him into a corridor where he was splashed in water and given only a few seconds to apply soap before being returned back to his cell. Joe worked tirelessly on the mill, even though it seemed pointless. He occasionally spoke with his neighbor, who complained that they were working for jobs. Joe gulped down his water in the heat and asked for more. However, his neighbor said they were only provided enough food and water to survive. Joe had to pee in bottles, hide them behind a pillar, then filter the urine through his shoe insoles to drink. Joe hated the notion and refused, despite his neighbor's remark that Mallard was pushing them. Joe often thought of Kate while working. He remembered when she worried about hospital fees and his pledge to work harder. When Kate said he couldn't do it alone, Joe sought to keep her from working out of concern for her and the baby. Kate reminded him that they might lose their house if she didn't work hard. She stopped trusting the corporation after Mallard breached promises for years. Joe fainted from tiredness after another long workday, but the AI surprised him by congratulating him on reaching 370 points. Joe saw Alex, engraved into the mill's handle as he gathered his breath. His neighbor told him Alex was the only one who escaped. The next day, Joe received a special gift, a pen with his name for his excellent work. Joe was first skeptical, but he soon saw that they had doubled his daily quota to 370. He showed his wounded hands and said he couldn't do it again, expressing frustration and rage. Joe threw the pen against the wall and insulted the uncaring company after the AI said humans needed a push. Joe saw that revolutions no longer earned him points after the punishment system. A small X appeared on the clock. His neighbor explained that the X was a penalty, making it 2 rotations to score a point. If he accumulated additional X's, the punishment would increase to 4 rotations, then 8, etc. Joe worked hard since he knew he had to do 740 revolutions to meet the day quota. Eventually, he quit up, tired. The neighbor yelled at Joe when he realized his new quota was 740, fearing for everyone's safety. The AI ended the workday and noted that Joe had missed his quota. Joe asked the AI about the penalty. The AI declared that Joe deserved the penalty for letting down his coworkers and needed incentive. The AI threatened to kidnap and force Kate, Joe's wife, to work there. Joe begged pardon and pledged to meet his new quota the next day, worried about Kate's safety. The AI gave Joe another chance and said he may avoid the penalty if he succeeded the next day. As an added token of appreciation, a large red light illuminated the ceiling, making it hard for Joe to sleep with the nighttime screams. Next day, Joe utilized his jacket to cushion the mill's handle to reduce hand agony as he worked hard under the crimson glare. Joe thought he was losing his mind from the arduous process. He even had hallucinations of himself mocking his hard work views. Joe persevered and reached the quota 1 second before time ran out, thinking about Kate and their kid. AI announced it lifted the punishment and the red light disappeared. Joe received a new token of appreciation from the AI the next morning, a little video of Kate in the hospital with their kid. Joe was overwhelmed with emotion after becoming a father, but he lamented the wonderful times he was losing in prison. Joe asked his neighbor how Alex escaped since he wanted to do the same. After seeing Joe lament missing his child's early years, the neighbor agreed to talk. He pointed Joe to a wall-blind spot behind the pillar. Joe quickly checked it and saw a patched circular region, suggesting a hole had been made. The AI gave him a pen to dig into the wall, and he found that the corporation had been so miserly that they hadn't patched the hole properly. Joe was exhausted after many days, but he kept going. He completed his daily mill quota at work and widened the hole in his free time. Joe crawled through the hole into a dark place when it was big enough. He was knocked out by a security after trying to negotiate the darkness. He woke up in the mill room with the hole filled again. The AI chastised him and threatened a 1,000 quota hike. Guards shattered the neighbor's legs simultaneously. Joe apologized, but the neighbor, who could not work, proceeded to voice his frustration and pointed out that the facility was run by algorithms. After learning about the neighbor's IT system design background and admitting that reasoning with the AI was pointless, Joe devised a risky method. If nobody worked, everyone would conclude the day with no points. Therefore, the AI's threat of fines or termination was pointless. Joe said they had nothing to lose, but the neighbor thought it was unsafe. Joe bravely climbed the mill and gave a passionate speech about the futility of hard work and the prospect of survival if they all refused to work. The other employees soon joined in, and no one worked when the workday started. Joe felt victorious, assuming he had won partially. A terrible twist was announced by the AI as the day ended. Without points, you'd be fired. Fearful, the other workers began work despite Joe's appeals. In a desperate attempt to excite them, the neighbor said his name was Alex and that he had escaped before but was recaptured and returned back. He didn't tell Joe earlier because he wanted a second chance. All Alex regretted was not burning the house down. After an emotional goodbye, Joe saw the guard take Alex away for termination. The next morning, the AI gave Joe another motivational present, a brief video of Kate and their walking baby. Joe was devastated to realize he'd been imprisoned for months, missing important family events. He exploded with colorful accusations and indignation at the firm for taking everything from him. Joe was fired by the AI for his behavior. Joe's appeals and questions were ignored as a group entered through the door. While considering Joe's death, the guard prepared an injection. Joe raged and attacked the guard. Blood stained the spectators as chaos ensued. The AI said the guard's failure would result in his termination and that Joe, who was finishing the mission, would achieve level 9. Joe suddenly changed his mind and stopped the assault, claiming that he wasn't a monster and wouldn't let the firm transform him into one. He quit. In an instant, Joe was back in a typical office, connected to a machine and surrounded by other employees in similar situations. Everything was part of the company's advanced career training simulation. A coworker who resembled the guard explained that Joe voluntarily participated in the simulation, which felt considerably longer but lasted 60 minutes. After a long wait, Joe was promoted to level 9 due to his increased production and leadership skills. The AI was friendlier when Joe was taken to his new office after disconnecting from the machine. After returning to reality, Joe couldn't shake the simulation's unsettling visions, which left him with PTSD. The office was small and suffocating. Joe hesitantly signed a non-disclosure agreement because the project was confidential, fearing for his wife's safety. Once alone, Joe called Kate, terrified as he heard her and crying as he checked on her. After the call, he wanted to bring the company down and burn it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.